handle my business and put on for the HBCU. Spending my prime, my waist on my grind. I'm revving my engine, I'm trained to go. Just like the diamond under the ground, I'm destined to shine, and that's for sure. Boy, take a seat, it's our turn. Yo, look at the moolah we earn. Don't play with fire, you'll learn. That will always stay lit, we burn. They swag, I'm swag, you swag. Y'all ain't ready, too bad. I overcome obstacles, nothing's impossible. I make them say, how did you do that? No matter the circumstances, boy, there ain't no second chances. But the odds got the advantage. Still gotta get up and handle it, that's facts. Dog, I'ma need some room, step back. One thing I won't do is lack. Only thing I pursue is cash. I don't really know about you. Swag, swagger, swag. Swag, swagger, swag. Y'all don't really want it, cause I'm Michael Jackson bad. Swag, swagger, swag. Swag, swagger, swag. Y'all ain't got nothing on me, cause I'm Michael Jackson bad. Swag, swagger, swag. Swag, swagger, swag. Y'all don't really want it, cause I'm Michael Jackson bad. Swag, swagger, swag. Swag, swagger, swag. Y'all ain't got nothing on me, cause I'm Michael Jackson bad.
Okay, swag, swagger, swag, I got that. Once I get the ball, you never get the rock back. Ringmaster, no top hat. We the best of the best, can't stop that. I steppers be stepping, alumni be rapping. Our drumliners out of this world, yeah, you know the deal. Show up on fields and serve with them L's like Louis Vuitton. We in our prime like 21. No matter the hill we climbing. Cause they say that pressure make diamonds. Probably why our women the finest. We shining on haters. You hate all you want, you can't fade us. You do what you can, but we do it major. We SWAC. Dribbling like nobody else can. You think you gon' beat us? You gon' need a brand new game plan. You gon' need a brand new offense. Your team is DOA. They gon' need a brand new coffin. We champions, we don't do talking. But I green like the boys in Boston. Yeah, we running, we ain't got time for walking. Never know lanes, we boss.
Swag, swagger, swag. Swag, swagger, swag. Y'all don't really want it, cause I'm Michael Jackson bad. Swag, swagger, swag. Swag, swagger, swag. Y'all ain't got nothing on me, cause I'm Michael Jackson bad. Swag, swagger, swag. Swag, swagger, swag. Y'all don't really want it, cause I'm Michael Jackson bad. Swag, swagger, swag. Swag, swagger, swag. Y'all ain't got nothing on me, cause I'm Michael Jackson bad.
Yo, what's going on, Lionel? Class of 2009, back with another episode of PV versus everybody. And listen, tonight we got another special guest on the show as we continue with our deep dive series, right? Like we said, right, we're looking at the full schedule this year, 2025. We're looking at every single school that PV is going to be looking at and getting a chance to face. And we're going to be connecting with some of the individuals that's following these programs closely so we can get a chance to check them out and see what they're looking like, right? You know what I mean? So, but before we get into that and invite the special guest of this evening up, I first wanted to remind you guys that, listen, if you have not yet, right, connected with the home team, you got and that first starts off with connecting with my boy, PV alumni, Jeff McKissick. All right. He's a Texas licensed loan officer with Fairway Independent Mortgage Company, and he'll guide you seamlessly through the home buying process. See, many of us are unaware of our credit score, our true financial situation, but Jeff will help you develop a step-by-step plan to improve your financial standing, making your dream of owning a home achievable sooner than you think. See, he understands your financial situation may not be perfect, but listen, that's okay. The sooner y'all start the conversation is the sooner you two can solve issues like credit and student loan debt. So don't let the fear of achieving new heights hold you back from getting the home of your dreams. Perfect for your growing family or for hosting those PV watch parties. So get started now on taking the first steps towards your new home and taking the next big step in your life. Don't delay. Talk with Jeff today so you can be in your home tomorrow. And he looks forward to talking with you soon. And listen, once you find the home of your dreams, you know what I'm saying? Once you got the loan in place, you got to make sure that home is right for you. And so when you're thinking big about your home purchase and want a thorough assessment of your biggest investment, you owe it to yourself to contact Big. That's Blueprint Improvement Group. Big provides homes inspections in the greater Houston area and is owned and operated by proud PV mechanical engineer alum Neil Harris. He has experienced inspectors with advanced tools and techniques to assess every aspect of the property from the roof to the foundation. So visit thinkbig.com or text 713-259-0673 to book your home inspection. Support the team that supports the team. All right. And we talk about the home team. Hey, listen, you already know what we talk about, man. Hey, it's your boy Lionel over here. You already know what it is when you talk about the home team. All right. And before I get started, first of all, listen, I'm on daddy duty. I'm on daddy duty. And my wife come to me like, did you not put a diaper on your daughter? I'm like, what you mean? I'm in the running right now for 2025 Dad of the Year. Let's be clear. 2025 Dad of the Year, I'm on the list. All right. I'm at least in the building, sitting on the front row. Okay. Let's be clear. Okay. But she asking me, did you not put a diaper on your daughter? And I'm like, of course. Listen, I just came from outside. I know the diaper's on the daughter. Okay. Listen, I go and tap her up. I'm like, where's your diaper? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Literally 5 seconds ago, you had a diaper on. You ain't got no diaper on. So come to find out, the diaper that fell off is in the corner of her onesie. I don't even know how the diaper got down there. It's crazy. Okay. So listen, had to take care of that real quick. But with that said, man, I'm gonna bring up my special guest for this evening. That's none other than C. Wells from SWACtalk Show. What's going on, my guy?
Oh man, I'm doing good, man. I can't complain. Just in the house on a rainy Wednesday, man, talking some SWAC football. Hey, it don't get no better than that.
Hey, listen, I'm happy y'all done took the rain from us because we had it all this morning. And listen, it was not good. I had to put my work to the later part of the day, which I don't like to do. You know what I mean? So but happy to carry it over to Louisiana now, so I ain't got to deal with it. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
But man, I appreciate you for jumping
while.
on. Hey, listen. I know, right? At the end of the day, man, it's all. I call my mom all the time back in Louisiana. It's like, hey, y'all getting the ranks. Like, yeah, man. If y'all get it, we gonna get it after y'all. We got it first. Y'all gonna get it later. That's basically how it happens. Okay, like it's definitely over here on this side of town, this side of Texas for sure. So, but yeah, we get you for coming to jump on, talk some deep dive to Southern Jaguar football. As we talked about, we're looking at all the different teams that's on our, radar this year, especially the ones that we're going to be playing against throughout the year, taking some time, right, to look in depth into the programs, right, find a little bit more about what's going on. And so we know you're a guy who you talk all the SWAC, right? You know what I mean? But we know where your heart lies, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, we know where your heart lies. Like, when they did the x-ray and opened it up, it wasn't red. It was blue. It was all type. It was a whole bunch of blues. It was a whole bunch of blues.
Every shade of blue. Yeah. Every shade of blue that you can imagine.
Yellow. So first and foremost, man, I just want to talk to just a recap, man. Last year, obviously, you guys made it to the SWAC Championship Game. Didn't the SWAC Championship Game didn't go the way you wanted to go, right? And especially when you feel like, the thought process was like, hey, if we had our trigger man there, who we put some belief in from what he did throughout the season, we feel like we would have been in a better position and situation. So what was your thoughts just in general about the recap from last year? How do you feel the season overall? And as you get into now the off season, what were you guys looking at as far as, man, these are some of the things we got to take care of?
All right. Well, first off, I'll say last season was probably one of the most frustrating and exciting seasons all in one. It was, you really didn't know what you were going to get when you went in the stadium from week to week, quarter to quarter. So, it never was dull. We won a lot of games in spite of ourselves. If you want to be honest, we really didn't play great offensively for the bulk of the season. I think we didn't score a first quarter touchdown until the Bayou Classic. So that tells you where we were offensively. But, we were a team carried by defense. And so you kind of understood at some point that we were just going to have to play ugly football. And, we found a way to score those last minute points in a lot of games and win those late games. and we just found, we just continue to find ways to win. But when you get a championship game, you need to play a more complete game of football. And I thought we played a solid first half, and then the wheels kind of fell off. But I felt like we had a lot of positive momentum coming out of the season. We didn't lose as many guys as I thought we would lose in the portal. So that helped some. I thought we recruited well. And I mean, obviously, the outlook is to improve on where we were. We finished 7-1 in conference, but it was an ugly 7-1. I know a lot of people take it, and I take it every day. But I want to see a more complete team, a more solid game, week in and week out. And I think the team is going to grow and develop into a better product.
Yeah, it's so funny because on our recap show right on Sundays, Coach Heish, kept coming on just like, man, it's like that rabbit's foot, you know what I'm saying, is there, you know what I'm saying, in Baton Rouge, and if it stay there, they're gonna keep it rolling, and that's what ended up happening, right? You know what I'm saying? Each week in and week out, it kept coming back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, that's the only way I can explain it. I mean, if you look at how we beat Texas Southern, they had the ball trying to run the clock out. They go to punt the ball. The punter drops the punt and misses it. And we score a touchdown to tie the game up and win in overtime. 5 overtime game against Bethune-Cookman. They had multiple chances to put us away. They never could score, even though we couldn't score. It just, it was always something that kind of fell our way. And then we were able to take advantage of it and play a good overtime period. So if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes to have the rabbit's foot. If that's what it takes, then I keep it with me at all times.
Hey, listen, that's sometimes we got a special guest on the show. She's like, I want to wave, okay? I want to wave, okay? So she decided to jump on. But when you talk about last season, also, right, Terrence Graves, right, and the staff that he was able to assemble, to put together, right. For a lot of people, you heard the talk about, man, it's an older staff, right? But with older staff, right, with older people in general, right, there's some system, right? You know what I'm saying? It comes experience. So a lot of the experience, right, you was able to see that, especially kind of going to the team. We talk about some of the last, some of the games, right, and some of the things that happen in order for you guys to get over the hump. But at the end of the day, like we talk about all the time, right? You got to learn how to win. Teams talk about that year in, year out, right? Of like, hey, you still have to learn how to win, right? You have to learn how to close games. And it's a benefit when you have people that's been through a lot of things, right? To be able to turn around. So guys, hey, this is what you can expect, right? You know what I'm saying? Hey, we're not out of games, right? This is how you stay in games, et cetera, right? You guys are able to close out a lot of games. Talk about just the coaching staff. How do you look at the coaching staff from last year and what they did, what they were able to put together? I know on the offensive side of things, it wasn't, people didn't sound like they was super happy with maybe the scheme and things like that, but just give an overall perspective of, from top down, Coach Graves and also some of the other positional coaches, offense, defense, kind of what's your thoughts on the coaching staff?
All right. Well, first off, Coach Graves is a Pete Richardson disciple, so he gonna approach games just like Coach Pete used to do. He always says, as long as you play a full 60 minutes, it don't matter how the team looks, as long as you win at the end. So exactly. He's more focused on just getting in position to win, and then when pulling it out. I thought he did a good job with the team that we had last season, because we had a lot of questions coming into the season. On the offensive side of the ball, we came in with an inexperienced offensive line. And if you watch our first few games, it showed. And then I'd say about Texas Southern game or so, they made some adjustments, played some younger guys, and, they started to gel, and the O-line got better, which meant the run game got better. And as a Prairie View person, Mark Frederick, he liked to run the football. So being able to run the ball, that really expanded our offense, even with, the inconsistency of the quarterback. I think for most people, that was the biggest issue. If you ask anybody, from last season, they look more at the fact that we didn't necessarily throw the ball consistently. We had games where we threw it well, but then we had games where we threw for less than 100 yards. But all of that was built by the running game. So I think that as long as that's there for Southern, we'll be good there. They pretty much have the same staff from last season. Of course, we lost Coach Willie Titan. I think he went to Fort Valley State as an offensive coordinator. So he was the quarterback coach. So Fred McNabb moves up to quarterback coach. On the defensive side, I think we lost. Unfortunately, we lost Coach Sean Wallace. He passed away earlier this year, so he was coaching safeties, and I think they added Lemuel Stinson, who used to play for Chicago Bears back in the day. He coming over to help secondary, but defensively, Southern's going to pressure the quarterback and try to blanket those receivers and try to make things tough for the opponents. So I think scheme wise, we're gonna continue to be what we are. I don't think Southern's ever gonna be one of those flashy teams that's gonna score a lot of points every week. We might have a game or two where we do it, but I think it's gonna be a lot of hopefully, mid 20s to low 30s type of games, on offense and defensively, you start to hold teams under 20, and I think that's where you'll end up in a good spot.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? And yeah, you did see at the end of the day, you guys were a defensive, team, right? Everything leaned on the defense. I was looking at, some of the numbers from last year. When you talk about offensively, right? You guys when you talk about in the SWAC play, right? 197 yards rushing per game, 181 yards passing, right? Versus 156 yards rushing and 207 passing overall, right? So you can definitely see how, definitely in SWAC play, you talk about getting toward the end of the year, you really start to ramp it up on the rushing side of things. You know what I'm saying? Even though kind of you probably wanted to see a little bit more explosiveness, right, from the passing game, but the rushing game, right, you guys did really, really well, right? Now you talk about some of the numbers, right, overall. You see overall with the offense, you guys averaged 20.9 points per game, last year overall, 23.5 in SWAC play, right? And so fifth overall in the SWAC play, but overall 20.9. In general, I think everybody would love for all of our numbers to be higher, right? But at the end of the day, it got the job done. But how did you just feel about the explosiveness of the offense? Because one thing I think, with the quarterback play, you saw 15 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, right? Almost a 1-to-1 ratio there, you know what I'm saying? And I know that's something that you guys are definitely looking at, that room being a lot better this year. But what's just your overall feel from the offensive side of things?
Well, offensively, the issue was turnovers. Like you said, 13 interceptions, and a lot of them came at bad times. Sometimes you had a drive going and, you throw a bad interception, you get the ball inside the red zone off of a turnover, then you throw an interception in triple coverage, and on a pass that you probably shouldn't have thrown. Those kind of things happen early, especially. Later in the season, those kind of mistakes kind of started to die down as, guys started to get more familiar. But a lot of it was just, missing opportunities, penalties, ending drives, and also the fact that we had a solid field goal kicker, which meant that you didn't always have to, if you got in the field goal range, kid had a 54 yarder a couple years ago, 50 yarder last year. So you always feel like you got that in your back pocket. So, maybe you're not as aggressive as you may want to be because, the majority of the time you're going to come out of there with at least something. But I think for a lot of people, it was just lack of consistency at the quarterback spot, which made the offense herky-jerky, if you want to put it that way, because we had games where they would make the throws, and then you would have games where, we couldn't make any throws. So if a perfect example, we played FAMU, we ran the ball well in the first half, almost 120 yards or so in the first half on the ground. They took that away. We ended up passing for like 80 yards, and we lost 24-6 because we couldn't move the ball, even though they were daring us to throw. So, I think those are the kind of things that really affected us last season. And, that's obviously something that the coaches are working on moving away from this season. And, I think, going from where we are right now, you got to feel, you got to feel good about it until, you actually see it in action.
Yeah, I think that was something that actually shocked me and kind of surprised me to see. Red zone offense, you guys were second to last, I think, in the league, 72% conversion percentage to Valley, and only 17 interceptions and 40 tries, right? I think I saw 3 interceptions and 3 turnovers on down. And like, if you could think back of, man, if we can convert even half of those, right? where does that put you, right? What kind of team offensively does it look like now if you just simply convert, in the red zone at a higher percentage? And I think, that's something that we understand too, right? We definitely had a hard time converting those red zone trips to touchdowns, right? You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, you're going to take points. So if you get 3, but man, add 7, it makes it a lot more comfortable, right? You know what I'm saying?
And,
so
add up quicker.
Now, yeah, listen, especially when you get there, right? You did a lot of work, right, to get into that red zone, right? And so to only be, I think I saw you guys 29 or 40, right? You know what I'm saying? But only 17 touchdowns, right? So, that's less than half of your trips that you scored, touchdowns on. And so I know that hurt a lot. Now, defensively, right, last year, you talked about leaning on your defense. Overall, really the top, Southern defense, I feel like was talked about. But when you really look at the numbers, how, do you feel like Southern defense isn't given enough credit? Because, you always hear about the Alabama State, right? You heard even about Jackson, especially about Jackson secondary, right? You know what I'm saying? You always hear about FAMU, even though last year people kind of feel like they fell off a little bit from a defensive side of things. But do you feel like Southern's defense isn't given as much credit as it deserves when you talk about only allowing 152 yards in the air, right? Overall, all last year, and over only 126 yards on the ground in SWAC play. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people do overlook Southern's defense because the Southern just has a reputation of playing ugly football. So a lot of times people just they kind of take the defense for granted, and you gotta when you take those numbers and look at them compared to how long that defense is on the field, that makes it even that makes those numbers even more impressive because a lot of times you're playing with your back against the wall. You're getting the ball, the opponent getting the ball at the 50 or maybe even inside the 50, and now you got to try to hold them out. So the defense, they stepped up all season. They had some problems stopping the run with certain teams. Jackson State gashed us. Of course, Nicholls State, gashed us. McNeese had a couple of big runs on us. But for the most part, they did a good job with that. And defensively on the passing side, having a strong pass rush is always gonna, throw everybody out of whack. So I think a lot of people, because we don't have a lot of guys with big names, I think we do kind of get lost in the shuffle. Now we not, obviously we're not on that JSU Alabama State level, but I think we a solid level below them, and I think that's still a good place to be. So defensively we're gonna always be what we are, and that's always gonna carry us through anytime. I feel like if we don't score or we turn the ball over, I feel like a lot of times defensively we're gonna get the stop. Now, my only complaint from last season on defense was turnovers. We did not force enough turnovers. We dropped a ton of interceptions all season, and it didn't really hurt us. But when you can take the ball away from somebody, that'll always help you more than it'll hurt you.
For sure. I think only 7 interceptions on a year. They have 10 forced fumbles and 8 fumble recoveries and 35 sacks, right? That helps a lot too. You know what I'm saying? So did get the quarterback on the ground quite a bit last year from a defensive line and perspective. But now talk about as we transition over into some of your transfers, right? You guys definitely had a couple pieces that kind of left out the program, not as many as a lot of other programs, right? And then you did have a couple guys graduate, right? I know obviously T-Set was one of the main guys that went over to Grambling, right? That people kind of felt like grew a little bit, right, in that quarterback room. Obviously, the two big ones were the running backs, Kendrick Grimes, right, who left out, right, and then obviously, Kobe Dillon is gone as well. And then you also had, I think the other guy that I saw, right, that left out too was Tyler Kirkwood, right. Not the top of the food chain as far as receivers, right, but a guy who was able to eat. And who, if it was coming back, right, would be a guy who come back with a lot of experience, right, and to be able to add to that room. He went over to Baylor, right, and also a bigger body. Just talk about a little bit about, guys maybe that have graduated and gone on, and maybe some of the guys that maybe that not on the radar that also have transferred out that you guys are looking to replace.
Well, first off, you nailed it on the head. The running back spot is probably the biggest spot that we lost. We lost our 3 leading rushers. Kobe Dillon, who was our leading rusher last season. Of course, Kendrick Grimes, who pretty much everybody's team that had at least one run from him against them. That was our home run hitter. And C.J. Russell, who was a guy that, was more of a steady type of guy. He was third in the rotation, but, you could still count on him to get good carries if you need them. And losing, those guys, that's going to cause for some adjustment. Of course, losing Xavier T-Set, is a big blow for me personally because, he's a Baton Rouge kid. That's a kid I watched play since he was in ninth grade. So, being able to watch him develop at Southern was great, but now he's at Grambling. That makes it tough to watch. But, I think, that kind of a guy who maybe could have blossomed in a star as he got more experience. He had his freshman up and downs, but, those are the kind of guys that you kind of need to build around. Offensive line, we lost a couple guys. Like I said, we lost Darius Harry on the defensive line. He played on defensive end opposite Kelby Givens. His development last season really helped because Givens was getting double teamed so much early in the season. So having that guy opposite him, kind of made some things happen. And Big Willie Miles, that's a guy that's another guy who really blossomed as a player. If you ever watched him play, he was one of those, like, I don't know his height, but he like 350, like 5'8", 350, like a little fire plug type of dude. But, he could clog up the middle and he developed as well. So losing guys like that. And of course, Derek Williams at linebacker is another guy that, that's maybe a lot of people don't know, but that's a guy who was a 4-year starter at Southern. And so, he's going to have to be replaced. But I thought they did Southern doesn't necessarily dive into the portal as much. They lean a lot on JUCOs. So we have gotten a few transfers, but I don't think anything as far as, I would consider, like major pickups. But of course, a lot of people looking at Cam McCoy coming from Jackson State at quarterback. And of course, we added Jamari Jones, who played at Valley, but he was at East Mississippi as well, also at quarterback. So it's, we are kind of in a position where they're just trying to plug in spots. And so it's not necessarily that you need to run out and get anything. If it falls in your lap, you obviously take it. But I think they're leaning more on JUCO guys than anything.
Yeah, definitely brought a lot of JUCO guys in through, when they signing, especially in that February signing class. I think you guys also really looked at trying to, solidify the trenches, right? Talk about losing a couple pieces on the O-line and D-line, right? But went out and got 8 offensive linemen, 9 defensive linemen, right? And multiple of those pieces came from, JUCO spots, right? So like Mikael Trotter, right? 6'2", 305 coming from Mississippi Gulf Coast. You also have Xavier Worrell coming from Tyler Junior College, right? 6'7", 315, right? You know what I'm saying? So big size guy. You also got another O-lineman, Clifton Webb. Sorry, not Clifton Webb, but Michael Washington coming from Iowa Central Community College, 6'5", 310. And then you also got East Central Community College, Maurice Evans on the offensive line that you added, and then also brought in 4 high school offensive linemen. Then talk about on the defensive side, Trinity Valley Community College, Kai Brown, 6'3", 235. You also got a guy coming over from Garden City Community College, a defensive tackle, 6'3" and 315. 290 from Coffee Community College, Austin of Higher, right, at defensive tackle, as well as Northeast Oklahoma Community College and Pearl River. You got Jaden Jones and Kendrick Sims. So you guys did, and then also got a guy from Kilgore, 6'2", 300, Sydney Humble as well, right? So definitely did a lot of work in the community college, right, ranks. That's what we definitely saw a lot of as far as Southern and Alcorn, right? Sticking true to, going to those JUCOs, you feel like you got connections there, feel like you got, you got eyes in those different places where guys get to go. And you talked about Jamari Jones, right? As one of the guys, a quarterback who's coming in along with Cameron Coy. This may be exactly what he needed, right? Played a little bit at Mississippi Valley, saw some sparks here and there. Not anything that would, set off any alarms. But now going and being able to be the guy at East Mississippi Community College, right? Looking at the numbers, 2,153 passing yards, 27 touchdowns, 12 interceptions on 63% completion percentage, with also 83 carries, 573 yards, 6 touchdowns. Do you feel like, you got McCoy, you got Jones now, right? You got Woods, right? And yeah, you got Jamari Jones, right? Who do you feel has the leg up right now in that quarterback room? Do you feel like Jamari Jones having a full year under his belt, also as an older guy, right? Because Woods is still a little bit younger guy, right? You know what I'm saying? Do you feel like that gives him a little bit of a leg up? Because I feel like, man, it's nothing like playing on the field, right? I don't care what we talking about, practice and all this stuff. Playing real games against real guys, that helps tremendously, right? You know what I'm saying? So how do you feel about Jones coming in and then versus the other quarterbacks you got?
No, I'm gonna be 100% honest. When we signed him, I was really like, I don't know about this because I mean, I know him from Valley, and Valley is
Right.
Valley, but a kid, he got hurt and he wasn't, really as productive as he could have been. But seeing him in person, and obviously, just spring game, you can't really take a lot from that. But he has great size. He is a runner, which I think helps in Southern's offense. And he seems to be developed, more accurate than I thought, at least, in those situations. But I think that gives him an advantage of legs. But right now, I think coming out of the spring, I still think Woods is the front runner. I'm not gonna say he's the guy, because obviously when you add in more guys, you're kind of saying, we still want some competition. But I do think the fact that he has a season in the offense, I think that maybe gives him a leg up right now. But once those guys get more comfortable, I think it's going to make it a little bit more interesting. I would not be surprised to see Jamari Jones start the season if he has a good fall camp. But right now, I think Jalen Woods is right now, I would say 1A and 1B. But I think, at least I hope, if we don't have the same situation we had last year where you're going into like week 9 and week 10 and still don't know who your quarterback is, So I think as a whole, I think the room is better this season. I think it's more talented. I think it's more experienced. And I think that helps a lot more than anything. So I think we're in good shape with either guy that we put out there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's good, right? It's good to have multiple guys you feel like can do similar things. It obviously seems like Coach Fred, what he's looking for, right, is a guy who can use his legs, right? Which is what we saw him wanting right here at PV as well, right? You know what I'm saying? When we had Trayshawn Conley, right? So, I think you can kind of see the tea leaves there, right? Bringing a guy like McCoy in who loses legs, bringing a guy like Jones in. And so we're going to really see what's going to happen when this fall camp gets started. But, talk about also now, is Dupree back as well, or is he gone? Him and Whitfield?
Dupree Fuller, he returns at tight end.
Okay.
He was our second leading receiver last season. Chandler Whitfield, he was a senior last year, so he finished his eligibility. But we returned Darren Marks also, who was one of our, I think he actually led the team in receptions. Him and Fuller had like 34 and 32 receptions, I think, something like that. So Dupree Fuller is a great weapon at tight end. It's just you have to make sure that you take advantage of him when he's on the field. He can run, he can run good routes. He got good hands. He's pretty physical. He blocks well, which obviously you're gonna need that in a Mark Frederick offense. You're gonna have to be able to block because you're gonna have to stay in sometime, but you can leak out and make plays. So I think we do have some guys that can make plays at the receiver and tight end spot. A kid that I'm excited to see. I don't know how much time he's gonna get. He's a freshman. His name is Hubert Calise. He came from St. Augustine in New Orleans. He was one of the top tight ends in the state, and he was a highly recruited prospect. I don't know how much he's going to see time this season, but that's a guy who I would love to see get some action. He has an ability to maybe make some plays once he's on the field.
Yeah, and I know you guys also have Jermaine Minor coming back as well, right? He was able to put in a little bit of time, 17 receptions, 212 yards last year too. So having him come back with Dupree Fuller, which I didn't see whether he was gone or not, his eligibility was gone or not. But now having him back, right, obviously boasts a lot, right? Because he's somebody who was able to be used a lot, in the receiving game. And, when you're trying to talk about bringing the quarterback in, right, no matter which guy you're trying to fit there, I mean, having that safety blanket helps a lot, right? You know what I'm saying? So, having Fuller there is going to help either one of those guys, especially if it's Woods, right, to be able to kind of come along, right, very steadily. Now, I was going to ask about freshmen. So you mentioned the one freshman coming from St. Augustine. You guys signed a lot of freshmen, right? You know what I'm saying, in that signing class. Outside of outside of the guy that's coming over from St. Augustine at tight end, is there any other guys that kind of pop off to you that you feel like can add something to this year's fall 2025 team and actually produce on offense, on defense, not just special teams?
I would say the one name out of all the young guys that we signed freshmen is Amarian Asbury. He's a running back from Southern Lab. And dad actually was, Daryl Asbury. He called games for Jackson State, played at Jackson State. He's 6'2", 215. He early enrolled. He participated in the spring. He played a spring game, looked pretty good. He has the opportunity to get some carries because, running back spot is wide open. And Coach Graves said he's not opposed to playing a freshman at that spot because that's one of the spots that you can play a young guy at, and let him develop. So, like I said, he got good size. He's a strong runner. And so I think, him coming in the spring and being able to get acclimated to the system early, I think he has a good opportunity to get some playing time on offense, like you said, not just on special teams. That's probably the main guy, I think, as a freshman that you can see hit the field. Maybe a couple guys like Zacchaeus Malvo might be a return type of guy, but offensively, I'm not quite sure where those kind of guys fit right now. But Asbury definitely is a guy who a lot of people are high on as a freshman.
Yeah, actually, how many guys do you got in that running back room right now, right? Because, obviously we talked about the top three that left out with CJ Russell, including Dylan and Rhymes. You also had Tice Fuller, right, jumped in the portal too as well with Braylon Morgan. He was kind of a wide receiver running back guy, right? Plays different roles. So really, it kind of really depleted the room, right? You know what I'm saying? After the top guys left out. So right now, how many guys do you guys actually even have in the room? Outside of the guy that I know you just added from Jackson State and the two freshmen. Well, now three. I guess two redshirt freshmen and now the freshman you added over here from Southern Lab. Yeah.
Well, right now, in the spring, we only had three guys at that spot. So they didn't really run the ball a lot in the spring game. They gave them some carries, but for the most part, they kind of, kept it, kept the run game out of it and worked more on passing. But as of right now, I know we have four in the room, but they're still looking for more guys to add just for depth because, they play a lot of backs. So you want to have as many guys as you can get, and you want more experienced guys. If I had a wish list, experienced running back would be the top of my list. He doesn't need to be great, but I need a guy that's been in the battles, because they're, the guys right now that we're in the spring, like I said, they freshmen, redshirt freshmen. So, they have, I think between the three guys, they have like 3 carries combined, and those came from Jason Gabriel in garbage time. So, having a guy that played, I think can go a long way in helping the offense. At least be steady and be consistent. So I know they're still looking to add that guy. If they can get it, that's great. If not, then you got to dance with what you got.
Right. Now I guess Mike Franklin, right, coming in from Jacksonville State. You guys are gonna be leaning a lot on him. He's definitely a guy that has a lot of experience, right? Played 2 seasons. Talk about the JUCO, right? Played 2 seasons at Contra Costa College. 1,500 plus rushing yards, 12 touchdowns in 2 seasons there, right? Then went on to UTEP, 45 carries, 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then last year, 8 carries for 55 touchdowns at Jacksonville State. So didn't play that much last year, Jacksonville State, but you bring in a guy, right, who got a lot of experience overall, right? You know what I mean? And I think the fact that he's also 6'2", 225 helps a lot, right? You know what I'm saying? So a bigger back, right? Because that's one thing I saw too was, you look at Dylan, you look at Rhymes, you look at even CJ Russell, all those guys are 6 foot, right? You know what I mean? Now, all of them aren't busting 200 pounds, right? But they're taller guys, right? A little bit bigger guys than what's left in the room. So when you said Asbury, he definitely kind of popped off when I was just looking at you guys' list of guys who was in the room, because obviously he has that size that probably Frederick would want to lean on, right? Because he likes running the ball. Need a guy that can take a lot more, take a lot of punishment, right? Because I'm gonna give you a lot of carries. But obviously Franklin is definitely going to be looked at to like, hey man, you're coming in as an experienced guy. You're not coming just to teach. You're coming to be the guy. And the good thing is, though, I will have to say, 5 yards per carry for one back, 4.5 for the other back, right? And I think like CJ Russell was like 4.9, right? So like everybody averaged over 4.5. That ain't just the running back, right? There's also O-line too as well, right? And so if your offensive line can continue opening holes, that helps assist whoever is carrying the ball in the backfield, right? If that O-line can still continue to grow, right? You know what I'm saying? You talked about playing the young guys. So that's definitely going to be something to benefit. And at least this, hey, listen, I know about John Curtis and Catholic High, right? You know, at least the freshmen you got in there came from some good programs, right? You know what I'm saying? So they done seen some good ball too, but I know it's different in college, you know, but they came from some good spots though.
Yeah, I look at it like when you get those kind of guys, from John Curtis, Catholic High, Edna Carr, those guys from those winning programs, they used to win in state, they used to competing for state championships, they used to being in discipline systems. So, you don't have to hold hands and get them to have good work ethic. You don't have to worry about, teaching those guys those kind of things because they come already ready with that. And so I think that helps. And like you said, Franklin is a bigger back, which I love. And, Coach Asbury's got good size because last season, like you say, Dylan, Russell, and Rhymes, they all were like 6 foot and between 200 and 210. They looked exactly the same. Sometimes when you looked at them, they all had dreads. They all wore a single digit. So at first glance, you couldn't tell who was who sometimes. I mean, I had to wait till a guy was running down the field to know which one of them it was. They had a game, Kobe Dillon broke a long run. I thought it was Kendrick Rhymes. I jumped up and I was like, oh, that's a touchdown. Then I saw the 9 and not the 6. And I like, well, he going to get us some good yardage. But, that kind of, having that guy that can be a short yardage back can also help you in the red zone and on, third and fourth and short. So, we didn't necessarily have that last season. So I think that can definitely make things better when you're trying to either run a game out or, in the short yardage and trying to score. So I'm glad they did get some bigger bodies out there.
No, for sure. Yeah. And at the end of the day, like you say, right, this team is predicated on defense. You guys are going to definitely be leaning on the defense, especially early in the year to start off. And so, if you can hold the fort down, right, until the offense gets rolling, you can still see some success, right, coming into the SWAC season, right, just like you did last year. And I listen, Traylon James coming back over, obviously redshirt freshman coming from PV. He's a guy who I liked a lot, coming out of high school. And so he's coming over there to add, I think, some depth to that room too as well. And so I think that's another piece that you got in the portal that's going to help you guys out, to continue to try to be defensively what you guys were last year and now add as well. So now talking about the complete outlook for this season, 2025, obviously, when you look pulling up your guys' schedule, right, you start off, of course, with North Carolina Central and the big MEAC SWAC Challenge. Yeah, obviously, we always pulling for the SWAC to show up in those games, right, because the MEAC for a while had run off from us, and so now it's like we're catching back up. Just talk about your schedule just in general, first of all, right? Like, what do you feel about the schedule? How do you feel about kind of the games and where they are? I looked at Gramblin's schedule, for example, last year and thought, like, man, they had such a great schedule, right, to really possibly, right, win the West and get to the championship game, even though it didn't go that way for them, though. So what do you just feel about just the layout of the schedule? Obviously, non-conference, you got North Carolina Central. I think also Alabama State is a non-conference game for you guys too as well, right? As well as Fresno State.
And Valley. So, those are non-conference games. Right. I'm not a fan of that.
I know y'all like the SWAC non-conference games. So
I am not a fan of that. I do not like that at all. And I definitely don't like going to Valley in a non-conference game. Nothing against Valley, but that's just not a non-conference trip I like. But looking at that MEAC SWAC Challenge,
to be honest, if you talking Jackson State, right, when y'all play them non-conference, I think almost everybody can understand that, right? But Valley and Alabama State non-conference is kind of like, why? You don't have to play them in a non-conference game, right? I'd rather you go to Nichols and be like, listen, we about to get our league back. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm really on this Southland train right now that I don't want to lose to no Southland schools in the SWAC, period. Because I can't stand in the Southland keep beating us. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah.
don't nobody agree with you more than me on that. A lot of people don't like playing Southland teams, but I always look at it as those teams are in your area. Those teams you're recruiting against. Those teams those guys, they get up to play you, so you should, return a favor. And so if I have to play McNeese or Valley, I'd rather play McNeese. I know some people would rather had a HBCU game, but if I don't want to have to play, I don't like non-conference games, non-conference games, however you want to put it, unless it's Jackson State, which I wish they didn't never roll off the schedule, but that's how it works. I don't mind not playing Valley every year. That's just what it is. But as far as that, I would like to change that, but I don't have no control. As far as the SWAC Challenge, we are 3-0 in that game. So we have a little streak of our own that we want to try to hold up. But it's gonna be a great first game for us. You're gonna find out exactly what we made of in week 0. Win or lose, you're gonna find out what Southern is, because Southern gonna be challenged by North Carolina Central. They're gonna always be tough. They're gonna be physical. They experience. They coming to win. So I think that's a great first game. And coming off of that game and going in the Valley, that could be something to help you out. Alabama State's a wild card at home, but you just never know with games like that. I think they lost some things on defense, but where we are record-wise could affect that game. Of course, we get Fresno State, which that game's been on the books for years. So just go ahead and get that, get a trip to California, and hopefully you play some good football and see what happens. But of course, Jackson State at home, which is always big, and they beat us 6 straight games. That streak has to end. And so, a lot of people weigh our schedule by those guys, and we lost them twice last season.
I didn't know it's been 6 in a row.
Yeah, it was once in 21, twice in 22, once in 23, and twice in 24. So they replaced Alcorn, where we used to lose to Alcorn 2 times a year. They didn't replace Alcorn, but we lose to them 2 times a year. So we have to get over that hump one way or the other, by hook or by crook. That game in Grambling, those are the games that the casual people know. You can win every game, but you lose to Jackson State, you lose to Grambling, people they notice that. So, and the fashion that we've been losing to them, we haven't had a close loss to them since 2021. So that has to change. And what better way than at home? Of course, we go to Bethune-Cookman. That's our first time playing in Daytona. If that game stays in Daytona, that's our first time playing there. So that's, an interesting trip. And then, we got our homecoming opponent who's giving us some trouble on homecoming, but we got to try to get over that hump as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to that game. I always look forward to, homecoming period, but having a good game for homecoming is always big. And this could be one of those games that has a huge hand in the West Division. As a whole, I always love Southern schedule because it's more backloaded in division games. So we kind of got an idea once we get to, late October where we stand. And a lot of times we have, 3-4 division games in a row at the end. So if you come into that knowing you need to win these games, then you don't have anybody but yourself to blame if you don't make it. Nothing's worse than like we had in 22, we needed help, and you needed everybody to lose for you to get in. That's never a good thing. But having all those games in front of you, to get you where you need to go, and you don't have to, root for nobody else. You just do what you got to do and you in. I think that makes the schedule so much better. But that FAMU game is tough. We haven't beaten them in a while. I think last time we beat them was 2012. So we got a long streak against them. We haven't beaten them in Baton Rouge since I couldn't even tell you. So that's a big one. Alcorn is always a problem in Norman. We have there's been a thorn in our side. Yeah, regardless of our record. Yeah. Regardless of our record, Alcorn has always been a problem. We went 12-1 in 2003. Alcorn was our one. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, so anytime we have a great team, Alcorn, no matter what their team, good or bad, they find a way to beat us. And of course, Texas Southern, we've had 2 games that I still don't know how we beat them the last 2 years, but that's a game that's always intense. And of course, the Bayou Classic to close things out. So for me,
Man,
having things, settle before you get to New Orleans makes for a better season because you never want to go into that game needing to beat Grambling to get whatever your goal is
yeah,
because, you don't want them to stop you from it. But I think all in all, our schedule is a solid schedule. Like I said, I'm not a fan of those two non-conference SWAC games, but, all in all, I think it's solid. We have a pretty good home schedule. So, I think if there's one season that, people want to come out,
yeah,
this is the year. So I think, I don't really
yeah.
have any major complaints for it.
I mean, Jackson State, Prairie View, FAMU, Texas Southern, all at home. That, I mean, to me, that's huge, right? You know what I'm saying? Having those all as home games, right? Obviously, Graham was in New Orleans, right? You know what I'm saying? At that neutral site that you're used to. The only one, right, that I think everybody always has, right, is like going to Lorman, right? You know, everybody. But outside of that, man, everything's at home. You know what I mean? Honestly, the SWAC to me is kind of weird sometimes with like how they do these schedules because I feel like a lot of times you see this, right? Where it's like, man, how does Southern get all of these guys at home, right? Or how does Jackson get all these guys at home? Or FAMU, right? I feel like the SWAC in general could probably do a little bit better job of kind of mixing it up. You know what I'm saying? But in general, right? I think when you guys look at your schedule, I mean, seeing all those home games, I think, man, helps a lot. I see Kerry here saying, Sewell, the brother with the data, numbers don't lie. He's the least biased polka dot Panther I know. And then I see
don't really
Zach
like that
also
term, but I'm going to steal it, though.
Got the legend himself, Sewell's in the house. Zach say he love it. Says Southern know they're getting dog walk in the SWAC MEAC Challenge. What's your response to that?
Right now, I'm gonna always stand up for my team. So we're gonna come to play. I don't know how it's gonna end, but we're gonna play four quarters of football, and if they pull away from us, then they pull away from us. But I'm really hoping for a team this season that rises to the challenge in those games. This is a measuring stick for us, and so we want to talk the talk, then we got to be able to walk the walk, and what better way to do it than to knock off a MEAC team? So. I think we're gonna hold our own. I feel like that in every game. So, what? What do I know?
Yeah, if you talk about the toughest challenge, I guess you feel like right now, just looking at the team that you guys have, tell us if this happens, right? We'll win the West and have a chance of winning the SWAC championship. If this happens, we don't have a chance of winning the West, right? And the season's not going to go as Southern fans would be excited about. Give us that one thing on both ends.
It's actually the same thing. It's something that a lot of people overlook until it's a problem, and that's special teams. We're losing Josh Griffin, who was our kicker for like the last 3 years. Punting was an issue last season. It was never consistent. We struggled in the return game last season, and we gave up a kick return to Bayou Classic and a punt return for a touchdown against FAMU. So if we don't give ourselves better field position, whether that's on a return or punting the ball and pinning people deep and having them start deeper, and then we get the ball back in better field position. If we have to consistently drive 65, 75 yards to score, that's going to slow us down. Any team is never going to be able to drive the length of the field multiple times a game and score. It just never, you're going to make a mistake somewhere. And so with a team that's maybe more defensive leaning, then you need a strong special teams. And so if we struggle there, then I think our season is going to be a big, big struggle. If we can be adequate to good, then I think we okay. But that part makes me nervous. I get, anytime we get ready to punt, I don't know what's going to happen. It can get blocked. It can be a good punt. You just never know. So that's something that I'm really, really looking at. And of course, obviously, if the offense doesn't get more explosiveness, and teams know that they don't have to worry about you beating them over the top or a lot of long runs, then they can cheat on you. So explosive offense, can win for us, and good special teams. Those are the two X factors for me either way.
That's good. I think that makes sense. I mean, if you coming into this season knew that, hey, we're going to average the same 23 points a game that we averaged last year, do you think you guys can still go 7-0, knowing the defense that you guys have coming back, or do you feel like you need to see an increase in offensive production from that average of last year?
Yeah, I think. If I had my choice, then yes, I need an increase because you can't keep sustaining yourself on the kind of football we play. You can't keep having those last minute drives to win a game or the tie game. Your defense is not always going to hold a team 5 or 6 times once they cross the 50-yard line until you get your act together. So sometimes the offense needs to take the lead. Sometimes you need to drive down the field and score first and get a defense something to work with. So I always felt like whenever we got the ball first, it was gonna be a struggle because we probably was gonna go 3-and-out, and then that meant the defense already was playing their back against the wall. So I think if we can keep our defense from spending so much time, playing on their back foot, I think that's going to make it better. So I don't even need a lot more points. I can take 28 or 30, and that should be enough if our defense
28 to 30
continues to give
is
up.
definitely a lot more points. From 23 to 28 to 30, that's a big.
Yeah, I mean that's like a touchdown. So that's a good jump. But I guess I'm not looking for like 40 points a game or something like that. If we can 28, 27, you're gonna win the majority of games. Of course, you're gonna have some shootouts, but for the most part, you win 27, 20, or
right,
28, 21,
right.
or even 28, 24, something like that. I think it gives you a little bit of cushion. We only scored in a FCS game, a D1 game, I want to put it. I think we only scored over 30 points once. So that can't happen. So you got to be able to score points.
Nah, I feel you.
That just has to happen.
And listen, that was definitely frustrating, right? To have, because man, I don't even want to relive that game with Kendrick Grimes in fourth quarter and overtime, right? But to have that first half, and it's like, man, how are we not up more than this, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just so frustrating, right? And then to have that low in the second half, you guys just start holding us in place, and next thing you know, the offense gets rolling. And it's gone, right? But like you say, you don't want to be a team that relies on that, right? And so hopefully this year, right, whether that's Jamari, Jalen Woods, McCoy, you find one quarterback right now. I'm saying hope because I'm just talking in general. You already know I don't hope y'all find nothing. Okay, let's be clear. But in general, right, you will hope you find that guy, right? You know what I'm saying, to be the main trigger man, right? So you guys can be a little bit more consistent. But I think also, right, we look at Mark Fredericks and what he wants to do offensively, having a guy from the quarterback position that can keep defensive, right, worried, you know what I'm saying, with their legs is something that adds a whole lot to what he wants to do, scheme-wise, right? So I think you can see that's kind of what he's looking for. I really expect that, whoever Southern starts at quarterback, right, is probably going to definitely be probably the third leading rusher on the team, right? You know what I'm saying? Because I think he's really going to look to use their legs a little bit more just based on kind of how you see him, recruiting in this offseason. But, man, C. Wells, I appreciate you for coming and jumping on, man, and talking, letting us know, deep dive a little bit more into the Southern football program. Let people know how they can connect with you, where they can find you at, man, over on the YouTube.
All right. If you don't know, y'all can find me on my YouTube channel, which is SWACtalk. I do shows pretty much every week, weekly, but typically Wednesdays and Sundays. We do our live show SWAC Smoke on Thursdays, so y'all want to check us out on that. Social media, everything SWACtalk. My Twitter is SWACtalk76. I'm typically more active there. So if you want to get any information on the show or any random thing I gotta say, you're probably gonna find it there. And so I appreciate you having me on, Lionel, man. Like I said, I'm glad to be able to come through and talk to the great people over here. Y'all got good, y'all good people at TV. We clashed for 1 week, but we all good, so I'm glad to be able to come through and hang out a little bit and let y'all know a little bit.
Hey, man.
This this was tough for me because you know me, I like to play that we don't got nothing card. And so, it's hard to talk about how my team really is. So, y'all got more of the real from me than I normally like to do. So pick a fourth place. I'm fine with
listen,
that.
well, I appreciate that for the people. I appreciate you doing that for the people because we're really trying to deep dive into all these programs, man. We don't talk enough about the SWAC programs, right? We don't talk enough about all of our players, right? I tell everybody every time, listen, because I follow LSU, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, dude, do you understand? LSU, they got channels that follow LSU that have every rep of the backup quarterbacks in spring practice. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
When you talk about access information, like really people, and I'm like, you can't really expect fans to really, really be fans if you don't give them information and access. Like that's what helps make it like that, right? And I think overall, right, just with our programs, we need to give a little bit more access, right? You know what I'm saying? We need to open up a little bit more, right? And provide that, right? Because if we want to turn around to the big networks and say, hey, pay us the big money, listen, that's gonna come with like, all right, well, listen, I need to get inside these programs, right? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, I'm happy that you're able to come on and share. At the end of the day, listen, I ain't calling no plays anyway. You know what I'm saying? You
exactly.
ain't calling no plays anyway, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, bro, if the coaches ain't got all 22 already in the first place, all of our programs in trouble anyway, right? So listen, they should already know all this stuff we talk about, okay? You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day. So anyway, we appreciate you for jumping on. And he say, speaking about LSU this year, he say they loaded with Brian Kelly. We gonna see because we gonna see. We really gonna see.
This is a non-LSU house, so I don't talk any Tiger football in this house. I live in Baton Rouge, but huh?
Whoa! What kind of house is this then?
Unfortunately, things are it's a Jaguar house. Number one, let me say that before anybody say anything, because I know some people get.
We don't need all the disclaimers. We don't need all the disclaimers. What kind of house?
I ain't got nothing in here. This is a Seminole house, so this is the only garnet and gold house in Baton Rouge. So been that way since I was little. Yes, been that way since I was little. So this is a Florida State house.
The disrespect.
And a Jaguar
I don't understand
house.
how Louisianans disrespect themselves all the time. I just don't get it, right? I just don't understand, man. You probably a Pittsburgh Steelers fan too.
Oh no, I'm a Cowboy fan.
Even worse. Even worse. I mean, listen. I knew it had to be you. Florida State Seminole. I knew you already was on the wrong side of things. Okay, so you're talking about Cowboy. You don't went from. I thought Steelers. I gave you a little bit of benefit, but you didn't kick that all out the window. The boy said Cowboy. Listen. Guys, if I'd have knew this, I would have got another Southern night out. I ain't even know this. My fault, y'all. That's my bad. That's on me. That's on me, okay. You know what I mean?
I will say this though. I will say this. Unlike a lot of people, I do go see those teams play. So it's like I'm not a fan that just sit there and watch it on TV. I go see them. I go see those teams play too. So, but I always been that way. Like I said, my dad's the first non-Southern game my dad took me to was Florida State and LSU, and I fell in love. So it just It is what it is, but we good people. We all come together, but I just don't. This is just not an LSU house, which makes it hard because my nephew is a diehard LSU fan, and so I don't like to let him watch the games when he's staying over here. But I compromise sometimes.
That's so hilarious. Oh man, hey, listen, the Campbell said it would have been worse if you said you was a Gator. Like,
oh no, I got a lot of bad experiences with Gators, so I'm good now.
Oh man, it's crazy, man. We almost got through this full show without Crooks coming on too. I thought I was gonna be able to sneak a Southern show in without Crooks jumping on, but I missed it.
Yeah,
I literally missed it by this much. You know what I'm saying? I missed it by this much, but you know what I'm saying?
I saw somebody in the chat. I saw somebody in the chat asking about him. They must have called him up, like Candyman. You said his name, you show up.
They said his name 3 times and he popped up. Hey, Mr. Campbell, listen. She gonna have the experience of her life, all right? Yeah. Now y'all notice what's happening right out in this world, right? Y'all done noticed it's a couple people who prominent at some of these schools, and now where they families going now? Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, I'm just saying because they get on that campus and then they say, "Listen, I done fell in love." But you know what I'm saying. Before we close out, man, I got to remind y'all, hey, listen. We pushed past the 800 mark, man. We heading to 1,000. If you guys have not subscribed to the channel, man, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Show some love, man. Hey, listen, if you want to support the channel, become a member, you can do that as well, right? And you also can show some love, right? Hit up the Cash App, right? PV versus everybody, man. Because listen, y'all already know where we headed. I'm trying to get everything in order because
Atlanta wins. Atlanta is the land of the purple and gold. Oh, the land of the purple and gold. Better get there. Better get there.
Hey, listen, better get there. Like we done. We done let's see what else talk is talk. Now we back. We back. All right. Listen, Atlanta. And it's cold in this. That's what I heard. It get cold in December. So we got the hoodies, man. But with that being said, man, I appreciate all y'all for jumping on, man. Live with the Campbell's funny. All right, you know what I'm saying? And showing love. Crook say he come in peace tonight. Because we talking something, so now he come in peace. Right now he come in peace. Right? You know what I'm saying?
He'll cause his problems later, you know.
Right. He'll cause it later, man. But again, man, we appreciate all y'all for coming to jump on, man, and showing some love. Make sure y'all check out SWACtalk show, man, over on YouTube as well. You know what I mean? Going live every week. What you got any shows specifically coming out up?
Yeah, we got SWAC Smoke. We got SWAC Smoke coming Thursday, which is tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central Time. So y'all check that out. We working on a couple of things that we rolling out, some different shows. Of course, I got whatever crossed my mind and I sit down in front of the computer and come up with. So just keep it locked, man. If you do subscribe, hit that notification, man. So you'll find out anytime something comes through.
That's facts. And listen, man, we're gonna continue doing these deep dives right into the different programs that we're gonna be seeing this year. So make sure you check that out. We're gonna be doing that each Wednesday, right? Of course, we got our Say What Now show that we're gonna be doing coming up soon. And listen, we got SWAC Tears dropping right like Media Day, right, in a month. Listen, y'all don't want to miss SWAC Tears this year. Last year, we set it off. SWAC Tears this year. Listen, just make sure you locked in. Make sure you hit the notification bell when you drop SWAC Tears this year, man. So with that being said, man, I appreciate y'all. I'm gonna holler at y'all.